They laughed in the boardroom. Clint didn't speak. He didn't argue. He just stood up. It was 1986, in a studio boardroom on the Warner Brothers lot in Burbank. Late afternoon. The kind of golden California light that makes everything look like cinema was filtering through the tall windows, illuminating a long, polished conference table where 6 men in expensive suits sat waiting. Clint Eastwood was 55 years old. He'd been making movies for 23 years. He'd directed 6 films. He'd built a reputation not just as an actor, but as a filmmaker who brought projects in on time, under budget, and without drama. The studio executives knew this. They'd made money with him. They wanted to keep making money with him. That's why they'd called this meeting. The head of production, a man named Richard Kellerman, 48 years old, 3-piece suit, gold Rolex, slid a contract across the table toward Clint. It was thick. Maybe 80 pages. "It's a good deal, Clint," Kellerman said, leaning back in his leather chair with the confidence of a man who'd never been told no. "Better than good. It's the best deal any director at this studio is getting. 3 pictures. Full creative control. Back-end participation. You'd be stupid to walk away from this." Clint looked at the contract. Didn't touch it. Didn't pick it up. "What's the catch?" His voice was quiet. Not aggressive. "Just asking." Kellerman smiled. "No catch. Just one small thing. We need to approve your final cut. Standard for this level of investment." Silence. The other executives shifted in their seats. One of them, Jerry Morrison, VP of Development, jumped in quickly. "It's just a formality, Clint. We're not going to change anything. We just need final say for the investors. You understand?" Clint looked at him. Didn't blink. "Final cut approval means you can change anything." "Theoretically, sure," Kellerman said, waving his hand dismissively. "But we won't." "Come on. We're talking about you. Clint Eastwood. We trust you. Then you don't need approval." Kellerman's smile tightened. "Clint, this is business. This is how things work at this level. You want the budget? You want the marketing spend? You want wide release? Then the studio needs protection. It's not personal." Clint stood up. Not fast. Not dramatically. He just placed both hands on the table, pushed himself to his feet, and stood there for a moment looking at the contract he hadn't touched. "I appreciate the offer," he said quietly, "but I'm going to pass." Clint didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. The room went completely still. Kellerman blinked, his smile frozen on his face like he'd misheard. "I'm sorry, what?" "I said no. Thank you for your time." Clint turned toward the door. Clint, hold on." Kellerman stood up now, his tone shifting from casual confidence to something sharper. "You're walking away from a 3-picture deal worth $20 million because of one clause? One standard industry clause that every director in this town agrees to?" Clint stopped at the door. Didn't turn around. "I'm not every director." Jerry Morrison laughed. Actually laughed. A short, nervous sound that broke the tension in exactly the wrong way. "Come on, Clint. Don't be difficult. This is Hollywood. Everybody compromises." Clint turned then. Slowly. Looked at Jerry with those narrowed eyes that had stared down outlaws in 100 westerns. "I don't." He opened the door and walked out. Behind him, the boardroom erupted into noise. Kellerman cursing. Morrison saying Clint would be back. They always came back. Another executive, the lawyer, saying this was a mistake. Eastwood was finished if he thought he could dictate terms to the studio. The door closed quietly behind Clint. He walked down the hallway. Past the framed posters of Warner Brothers classics. Past the assistants at their desks who looked up as he passed but didn't say anything because the expression on his face said he wasn't interested in small talk. He got in his truck, a beat-up Ford he'd been driving for 6 years despite being able to afford anything he wanted, and drove off the lot. He didn't look back. Kellerman stood at the window of the boardroom watching Clint's truck disappear through the studio gates. The other executives had gathered around him. "He'll call tomorrow," Jerry Morrison said confidently. "He's just posturing. Trying to negotiate." Kellerman didn't answer. He was staring at the contract still sitting on the table, untouched. "Richard?" Morrison pressed. "He'll call, right?" "No," Kellerman said quietly. "He won't." To understand what happened next, you need to understand something about Clint Eastwood that the studio executives had forgotten. He didn't need them. Clint had been making movies his own way since 1971, when he directed his first film, Play Misty for Me. He'd learned early that the less he depended on studio money, the more freedom he had. So he'd kept his budgets tight. Kept his crews small. Shot efficiently. Finished on schedule. While other directors were demanding $40 million budgets and year-long shoots, Clint was making quality films for a fraction of the cost and bringing them in early. This drove some people crazy. It made them suspicious. How could he work so fast? Where were the cost overruns? Where was the drama? But it also meant he had options. 3 days after walking out of that Warner Brothers meeting, Clint got a call from El Paso Productions, his own company. His producer, a man named David Valdez who'd worked with Clint for 8 years, had news. "I got a call from Ted Turner," David said. "He wants to meet with you." Ted Turner owned MGM. He was known as a risk-taker. A maverick. Someone who didn't care about how things were done, if he thought something would work. The meeting happened the next day. Not in a boardroom. In Turner's office. Just the two of them. Turner didn't slide a contract across the desk. He asked Clint what he wanted to make. Clint told him about a script he'd been reading. A war film. Character-driven. Not a lot of action. Budget would be around $15 million if shot right. "What's it called?" Turner asked. "Heartbreak Ridge." Turner nodded. "When do you want to start?" 3 months. "You'll have final cut?" "Yes." "Done." Turner stood up and shook Clint's hand. "Make your movie. Bring it in on budget. That's all I ask." The entire meeting lasted 22 minutes. Subscribe and leave a comment, because the most important part of this story is still unfolding. Heartbreak Ridge started shooting in September 1986. Clint brought it in 2 days ahead of schedule and $800,000 under budget. It opened in December to solid reviews and made $120 million worldwide. Back at Warner Brothers, Richard Kellerman heard about the deal. Heard that Clint had gotten everything he'd asked for, including final cut, from Turner without negotiation. He called Clint's agent. "I want to talk to Clint about future projects," Kellerman said. "Tell him we're flexible on terms." The agent called Clint. Relayed the message. Clint's response was 4 words. "I'm good. Thanks." Jerry Morrison, the VP who'd laughed in that boardroom meeting, heard about Kellerman trying to get Clint back. He went to Kellerman's office. "Why are you chasing him?" Morrison asked. "He walked out on us. Let him make his little movies somewhere else." Kellerman looked at Morrison like he was seeing him clearly for the first time. "You really don't understand, do you?" "Understand what?" "You laughed at him. You thought he was bluffing. You thought he needed us more than we needed him. And you were wrong." Morrison shifted uncomfortably. "It was just business negotiation." "No," Kellerman interrupted. "It was disrespect. And Clint Eastwood doesn't forget disrespect. He doesn't yell about it. He doesn't argue about it. He just walks away. And then he proves you wrong by succeeding without you." Morrison left the office angry. But 3 months later he understood. Warner Brothers lost Clint Eastwood for the next 6 years. 6 years of films that could have been Warner projects went to other studios. Unforgiven. In the Line of Fire. A Perfect World. All made elsewhere. All successful. Meanwhile, Jerry Morrison's career at Warner Brothers stalled. He didn't get the promotion he'd been promised. Other executives passed him. By 1990, he was out. People in the industry knew why. They'd heard the story. The day Jerry Morrison laughed at Clint Eastwood and Clint just walked away. In Hollywood, that story had a meaning. Don't mistake quiet for weakness. Away from the cameras, Clint made a choice no one expected. In 1992, Clint was working on Unforgiven, the film that would win him his first Best Director Oscar. During pre-production, his assistant mentioned that Richard Kellerman, the Warner Brothers executive who tried to force the final cut approval clause 6 years earlier, had called asking if Clint would consider meeting about a project. "What did you tell him?" Clint asked. "I said I'd ask you." Clint thought about it. 6 years had passed. Unforgiven was being made through Warner Brothers anyway, through a complicated arrangement that gave Clint full creative control. "Set up the meeting," Clint said. The assistant was surprised. "Really?" "Yeah." The meeting happened the following week. Same studio lot. Different building. Kellerman walked in looking older, more cautious. "Clint," he said, extending his hand. "Thank you for seeing me." Clint shook it. "What can I do for you, Richard?" Kellerman sat down. "I wanted to apologize for that meeting in '86. I was wrong. I was trying to protect the studio, but I was wrong about how to do it. You proved that." Clint nodded slowly. Didn't say anything. "I also wanted to say," Kellerman continued, "that I'm not asking you to forget what happened. I'm just asking if we can move forward differently." Silence. Then Clint spoke. "You know why I walked out that day? Because of the final cut clause." "No. I walked out because Jerry Morrison laughed." Kellerman blinked. That's why. I don't care about contracts," Clint said quietly. "Contracts are just paper. I care about respect." "Jerry laughed because he thought I needed you more than you needed me. He thought I was desperate. And when someone thinks you're desperate, they don't respect your work. They don't respect your time. They don't respect the people you employ or the stories you're trying to tell." Kellerman sat back in his chair. "I understand. Do you?" "I think so. You walked away because staying would have meant accepting that disrespect. And if you accepted it once, it would happen again." Clint nodded. "That's right. For what it's worth," Kellerman said. "Jerry's gone. He's not with the studio anymore." "I know." "You know? People talk." Kellerman smiled slightly. "They do. So what do you want, Richard?" "I want to know if Warner Brothers can be your home again. Not for this film, I know Unforgiven is already set up. But for the next one. And the ones after that. With the same deal Turner gave you. Final cut. Full creative control. We just ask that you make the movies you want to make and let us distribute them." Clint looked at him for a long moment. "And if I say no? Then I'll wish you luck and we'll both move on." Clint stood up. Extended his hand. "I'll think about it." They shook. What followed stayed with everyone who witnessed it, forever. Unforgiven premiered in August 1992. It was a phenomenon. Critics called it a masterpiece. Audiences loved it. It made $159 million and won 4 Oscars, including Best Picture and Best Director for Clint. At the Oscar ceremony, when Clint accepted the Best Director award, he gave a short speech. Thanked his crew. Thanked the cast. Thanked the studio for trusting him. He didn't mention the 1986 boardroom meeting. Didn't mention Richard Kellerman or Jerry Morrison or the contract he'd refused to sign. But people in the industry knew. They'd heard the story. They understood what that speech really meant. It meant, I did it my way. And it worked. After the Oscars, Clint called Richard Kellerman. "I thought about your offer," Clint said. "And? Let's make some movies." Clint Eastwood returned to Warner Brothers. Not because he needed them. Not because he'd been proven right and they'd been proven wrong. but because Kellerman had apologized, had shown respect, had offered a real partnership instead of a power play. Over the next 25 years, Clint Eastwood made 23 films with Warner Brothers' $1 Million Baby, Gran Torino, American Sniper, Sully, every single one with Final Cut. The 1986 contract that Richard Kellerman had slid across the table, the one with the Final Cut approval clause, stayed in the Warner Brothers vault. Kellerman kept it in a frame in his office. Not as a trophy. As a reminder. Some people you negotiate with, he told young executives who asked about it. And some people you trust. The trick is knowing the difference before you lose them. Jerry Morrison, the man who laughed, never worked in Hollywood again. Clint never mentioned him. Never had to. Share and subscribe. Some stories deserve to be remembered. The boardroom where it happened was renovated in 2003. Different carpet. Different furniture. But people who worked at Warner Brothers still called it the Eastwood Room. Not because Clint ever set foot in it again. Because it was where they learned that real power doesn't argue. It just walks away. And builds something better somewhere else.